place where real dialogue matters.
Make some noise for that sound, man.
It is time to take flight with Audio Airstrike.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Audio Airstrike. I'm your host, Everett Hall-McNeill. Thank you for joining us. Now, this episode will be focusing on Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. So for those of you who have not seen it, don't get mad at me. Just, pause the episode now. This is going to be spoiler alert city. So just keep in mind, we're going to let the cat out the bag on some stuff. We're going to sit over here and get our opinions off, whether you like them or not. That is what will be taking place. Now, I want to introduce some esteemed guests at this time. I want to introduce some guests. Both of them I went to school with. Both of them are highly opinionated, especially when it comes to Star Wars. To my, I guess, wherever you guys are seeing this, the person in the black cap is Cale Holmes. Film enthusiast, film buff, also doing his own thing independently. Welcome on to the show. And also, yeah, man, definitely. And also we got my boy Matthew Friend, who is an editor, freelance filmmaker, all of the above. Really talented, creative. So let's get right down to it. Your initial thoughts, couple sentences about your initial thoughts on the overall film.
You want me to go first?
Matt, I'll let you start off. Kale, I'll let you go second.
I got to pull up. I actually wrote like an initial thoughts thing down. Give me a sec.
Man, we don't need no Declaration of Independence.
It's like three sentences.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a theme park ride without a soul, a film with so little faith in its themes and characters it whizzes and jerks you around a mile a minute, dancing iconography in front of you to distract you from the fact that almost nothing makes sense or means anything.
Oh, tell us how you really hate it. My God. Cale, what are your thoughts?
Movie, you could tell.
I guess I see.
With me, mine isn't as concise as that, but if I was to sum it up in a few words, because I had such low expectations going in, and I'd already kind of lost faith at this point, I just went in expecting something fun, something messy, and in almost like a B-movie kind of way, because I knew how messy it was. I knew how much of a disaster it was probably going to be based on everything you're hearing from behind the scenes. So with that such low expectations, I got kind of a fun, messy ride that, in a way, I could see a good movie there buried beneath all the sewage that was.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel the same way. It's like, it felt like the movie equivalent of somebody like continually trying to like start an engine and like it would sputter like every once in a while. I think there were like two moments in the film where I like actually like really like felt an emotion, like an actual emotion watching the movie. But we'll get to that once we kind of get into the nitty-gritty. But mostly I didn't feel anything watching the movie. Mm-hmm. It just didn't do anything for me, which for me, like, I didn't hate the movie because like Cale said, I kind of went in with not really any expectations of it being good. Now, we should probably start off by kind of laying out how we felt briefly about kind of what we felt about the two that came before, because I liked both Force Awakens and Last Jedi. All right, like I thought they were like okay movies. I thought they were doing really, really different things, which is kind of part of the problem when you get down to it. But yeah, I liked them both for different. Last Jedi, I appreciated what it was trying to do, as messy as it was. I don't hate it. It is, and I think Rian Johnson. I saw Knives Out. He's clearly a pretty good filmmaker, really good filmmaker. So I went into this more just because I felt like at the end of The Last Jedi, I didn't really care what happened afterwards, because it felt like there really weren't a lot of questions or sort of thematic through lines that I felt like the movie needed to answer. Because really the only question left at the end of Last Jedi was, are the good guys going to win? It's a Star Wars movie, so yes, of course they are. And are Rey and Kylo going to kiss?
I would go a little bit further than that. I mean, if there's one thing the Last Jedi and this have in common is that the awkward sexual tension between the two of them is about as subtle as his lightsaber.
Right. And to make it more obvious, he was standing there shirtless in one scene for Last Jedi.
Right.
Like,
it's so weird. And I've been hearing stories about, just audience reactions to the theaters, and we are in full spoiler territory right now, right? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
Talk about shit. Yeah, when they kiss, like right before he dies, apparently, like just like people in the audience, like I like laughing because it's like there was the tension there in The Last Jedi, but there's no reason for these. I mean, they have a connection.
That's why I said it's like
they have a connection. They have a history, and they have a common sense of sort of common history and sort of common sort of struggle with being really powerful and like dark side and all that stuff. But
surface
level. But it wasn't like the kind of romantic, because he did murder like one of the first people to really take her in as a parental figure, like in cold blood with a lightsaber, and like is a horrible mass murderer with a lightsaber. So it didn't ring true to me.
The girls like dudes with an edge, man. Girls like dudes with an edge. It always sells.
But they kind of wrapped that up in The Last Jedi. They kind of were working towards like a relationship, and then it ended at the end abruptly.
Right, exactly.
Kind of like she was leaving him. Like there's that scene where she cut him off from the Force thing, and they separated. And then as soon as The Last Jedi began, or the Rise of Skywalker, that tension and everything immediately resumes. Like there's no resolution to them having that abrupt like ending to their relationship in the last movie. They go right back to like, I'm going to convert you to the dark side. No, I'm going to convert you to the light. Like,
yeah, because the end of The Last Jedi, in terms of character arcs, we have, Rey has sort of resolved her sort of where do I belong and kind of story. Finn basically repeated his story from the Force Awakens, and that sort of ended again. It's like, do I need to like look at whether he should look out for his own self-interest in getting away, or whether he should make himself a part of this bigger struggle? And I thought Force Awakens that. I think Last Jedi really codified that for him. So again, there wasn't really anything for him to do in this movie. I mean, I guess there's like some unresolved like romantic tension with him and Rey, but I didn't really. I mean, they were apart the entirety of The Last Jedi, so I didn't really care.
Right.
Let me chime in.
When they finally are physically in the same spot for the first time, it's a total non-moment. They don't really emphasize that because they go to the whole like them being force connected in the same space. They really don't have any subtlety with that anymore. They're literally having lightsaber battles, which I wonder what that must have looked like to people. Did Rey just look like she was on PCP?
I thought the action. I didn't think the action in this sort of the lightsaber fights in this movie were and I don't really like a lot of the lightsaber fights in the sequels, much as they kind of. I know they're trying to break away from like the over choreographed dance routines that the prequel trilogy had, but they felt just kind of clumsy to me. And
well, I think it made sense in The Force Awakens that it was kind of clumsy because Kylo was very injured.
Right. That's pretty. Yeah. That's right. That's probably the only one that I kind of buy in there.
All brutal and kind of messy, and it was supposed to be. But by the time the Rise of Skywalker is going to be around, like you're supposed to really think that these two are the most talented Jedi.
Yeah, they should.
Can we just talk about the fact for a second that the 3 times that Kylo Ren and Rey fought each other, Kylo Ren loses? So where's the? He just loses every time. Like how is he a threat to her if he literally just every time they encounter each other he just loses? Really embarrassingly.
That was one of the kind of the main problems. I think he should have got a couple close calls in there, almost making him lose to kind of make him more of a threat. And the fact that the character is still interesting, Kylo Ren is still an interesting character, despite the fact that he just loses all the time, I think is really a testament to how good an actor Adam Driver is.
Yes.
True.
I just saw Marriage Story. That was devastating. God, Adam Driver, I hope he... I mean, I've of all the cast, there's always like that one Star Wars cast member that just like escapes the gravitational pull of Star Wars and like just flourishes. There's Harrison Ford from the original trilogy.
That's interesting.
Maybe Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman kind of were sort of nobodies, and they kind of hackers. And I think Adam Driver in this. I think John Boyega is, and Oscar Isaac too. You know, maybe I don't know about Daisy Ridley, so I don't know.
Well, has she done anything since?
She did that Murder on the Orient Express movie, and apparently she did like this young adult novel adaptation with Tom Holland that they filmed like 3 or 4 years ago. And just never released.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that, and it was never released, and because of like it went through like a release hell or something.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's not really on my radar there, but it's it's interesting.
Yeah, so I wanted to get to one other thing, and then my thoughts on Rise of Skywalker is this, and I just want to get your opinion on it. For one, I'll start by saying this: I thought Last Jedi was. I'm not gonna say uber trash, but there were some things that really ticked me off and I didn't like. And I felt like even though J.J. Abrams said that my job was not to clean up any mess that Last Jedi possibly left behind, it was more of I'm trying to wrap this up nicely. Where I think they messed up is putting Rian Johnson in the middle of what J.J. Abrams was doing. In my personal opinion, I think you need one director throughout the trilogy to have that consistency that's there. You see a breakup of consistency. The reason why is because you got 2 different directors working on a trilogy, and they're going to have very, very different ideas as to the execution, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think in Rian Johnson's case, I think and again, I liked The Last Jedi. I liked it when I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters, but I remember I liked it. I liked it pretty good coming out of the theater, though. You know, it's kind of waned on me a little bit since then. I feel like because Rian Johnson's thing, and he said as much, is that he wanted to make a movie about Star Wars. The problem with that is if you're going to make a movie kind of about something, you've kind of got to resolve the thesis of your movie within the one movie that he has, which is bad when there's another movie that has to follow after. So if he spends his movie and he resolves his movie and his sort of thematic thesis that he's kind of going for within that one movie, it doesn't really leave a lot of momentum for the next movie to kind of pick up on. Because if we're talking about like the other 2 trilogies, that they left off, the middle chapter left off with something to look forward to. And we talked about this earlier, like, Empire Strikes Back, Han's kidnapped, Luke dealing with, and it's not just plot things like Han being kidnapped. It's also questions of like Luke dealing with, trying to become a Jedi and finding out his father is Darth Vader. So there's questions in terms of the internal conflict kind of going right there. And, the prequel trilogy, as much as the issues with them aside, Attack of the Clones left off with, Clone Wars have started. Anakin has given in to his feelings and has married Padme. And, it leaves something to look to be resolved in the next film. And I thought Rian Johnson was a little selfish in really focusing so much on trying to make a movie about Star Wars that he kind of was a little myopic in his approach. So I as much as I can harp on JJ for all his, his weaknesses as a storyteller, and there are many.
Yes.
He was kind of dealt a shit hand from the start. So I don't know if you can really pin the blame on one or the other.
Well, they both, in a weird way, made like starter films. Like they both kind of, in a weird way, these 3 films to me kind of remind me of the last 3 Terminator movies, where each of them, they're supposed to be
a follow-up to Terminator 2.
Yeah, a follow-up to something, but also be their own thing.
Right.
And all of them kind of didn't really follow up on what the other one that preceded it. Like each film, when we started with The Force Awakens, the next one, Last Jedi, totally threw out everything that The Force Awakens had set up to do its own thing. And then Rise of Skywalker comes and totally outdoes everything that The Last Jedi did to set up things. So it feels like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi were both two setup films. And then
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, and then Rise of the Skywalker was almost like trying to undo something, but still not make it totally unnecessary.
Well, I think ultimately it comes down to, and I just think a lot of it comes down to not having that person on the mountaintop who can see far and see where it needs to go and point and say, that's the direction that we got to go. Like, I mean, people rightfully talk about how, George Lucas needs people around him to be able to focus and get to be able to guide, to help him guide his ideas into something watchable. But in the same token, something like this needs, if not George Lucas, then one person who can, point and say, this is the direction we're going, and this is where we need to go. This is the thematic through line. This is the story we're going to tell over 3 films, rather than we're going to make 3 more Star Wars movies in isolation and kind of hope that they kind of, maybe line up or something.
Yeah, it is kind of weird how I think like the 2 people out of this whole like Disney Star Wars experiment, it seems like the 2 people are praising the most are Jon Favreau for his writing on The Mandalorian and Gareth Edwards for directing Rogue One. It seems like
I'm not a huge fan of Rogue One. I liked the last third of Rogue One, all right.
But his direction, he actually knew how to film a Star Wars film. He actually knew.
Yes.
He actually.
Honestly, who I think probably in terms of maybe not necessarily, directing all the films, but who should have really been like sort of the visionary who kind of crafts this, Dave Filoni.
That's what I also because he did like the Clone Wars animated.
The Clone Wars TV series, and I mean, he's George Lucas himself. David Filoni is more or less his apprentice. He's the person he sort of was bringing up to be sort of like his successor and sort of being the overseer of Star Wars.
Well, I haven't delved too much into the Clone Wars. Like I kind of want to now that I have Disney Plus, but there's like so much of it. But I actually hear like there were like petitions to make that its own thing, that it didn't follow any sort of like it would totally retcon the events of Revenge of the Sith and just kind of do its own thing from its own point. Like at
one thing?
At the like during like the 5th or 6th season of the Clone Wars,
right.
Like people wanted it to do its own thing because they actually liked this version of Anakin and they liked these versions of the characters, and they figured that the events could still happen but make it their own version of how the events transpired.
Yeah, but I don't agree. I like Revenge of the Sith a whole lot, personally.
Isn't it weird that's the one trilogy bookend out of all the trilogies that really wraps everything up that it set out to do initially? Like even Return of the Jedi kind of has some slip-ups when it comes to like completing its arcs of its characters.
I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I think it does it maybe a little too cleanly, honestly. I think it does Luke's story great. I like Return of the Jedi. I think might be my second favorite Star Wars movie after Empire.
Well,
partially nostalgia. I like
unanimously. Everybody's favorite top Star Wars film is Empire. Yeah.
Well, I think it's the majority opinion. I know some people who like the original better.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Notice how we basically just kind of spent a lot of this time just talking about Star Wars in general, and we haven't started talking about Rise of Skywalker yet.
Yeah, that is
true. There's really just not that much to talk about. I mean, the movie is literally 2/3 of it. They go to the planet, they talk to some people, and they get the thing. That's really all that's happening.
And there are things that there was no setup for, like the Sith holocrons and stuff. Those are never discussed in any of the 2 films. Literally, Palpatine is mentioned in the first sentence of the text crawl to be like, hey, he's back, I guess.
Oh, that transmission they mentioned? Do you want to know where you had to hear that before you saw the film? In the Fortnite Star Wars event. that they had a week before the film came out.
Mm.
That was where they actually had the broadcast playing in Fortnite for the event, to get the kids kind of on board,
It's almost like a beautiful Greek tragedy about that describes Disney's focus as to their target audience or what they were trying to create with this Star Wars trilogy.
Intentionally or not, I think the Star Wars saga as a whole has sort of become this incredible meta commentary about, the perils and pitfalls of like mythic storytelling, and sort of all the aspects, like the original trilogy, which works great on its own, is self-contained, the quibbles and all. The prequel trilogy, which is, the visionary who's trying to get all these themes and context and universe building out that he couldn't do within the framework of just the classical storytelling,
right,
and goes so far afield he kind of loses a lot of the basic humanity that, creates that connective spark with people. And then the sequel trilogy, which is the derivative works from the people who are fans and are sort of made by committee, and how they're not able to capture that sort of ingenuitive spark that sort of makes the original 6, if not necessarily good films, like unique works of mythic storytelling.
Right. It's hard to get the vibe from the originator. If the originator doesn't have his hands deep in the foundation, like in the movies previous, it's hard to reduplicate that magic. I don't care who's involved.
George Lucas gave them. George Lucas gave them outlines for the story.
And they said that they were before they signed. It was like a handshake agreement that they said, "Hey, we're going to take your ideas, we're going to tinker them with them, but we're going to keep the essence of what you wanted
in this
to be."
And apparently, with Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams brought George Lucas back on to do a story. Like, these are rumors. Okay. Disclaimer: these are rumors that are floating around. But that J.J. Abrams brought George Lucas back on, and they came up with a story, and they came up with a script that they were going to do. But at some point, Disney got cold feet and started tinkering with things and demanding things.
And it's
a whole. And
right.
They basically scrapped George's ideas again.
And that's the issue. Because the originator, the guy, and say what you want about George Lucas, when he sold it to Disney, when he sold that product of Star Wars to Disney, because let's keep in mind, George made a good chunk of change because he believed in what he was doing. That we know for sure.
And he's making money off of these. I mean, he has a bunch of Disney stock, so he's making bank.
He's making bank. But the problem is the originator has been subtly kicked out of that original seat. You said Disney got cold feet just now and was like, "No, we want these changes." Imagine if they didn't get in the way at that point. What would this film had looked like? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I can't wait for people's NDAs to expire so that they can just start.
Well, I mean, everyone kind of loves that when the Phantom Menace DVD came out, they had that wonderfully almost macabre behind-the-scenes documentary of the making of it, where they
I've watched that so many times, just because it is such a... There's something really... And you know what? I like the Phantom Menace all right, because I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. It's a good sort of, adventure movie for kids thing, and I appreciate it for that. But there's something, and there's another one, because there's a similar sort of really exhaustive behind the scenes documentary, like really comprehensive documentary about like the Matrix sequels too. So that coupled with like the Phantom Menace documentary is like, you're watching all these people who are just so passionate about this and so believe that this is going to be this beloved seminal work of genre fiction, and just the amount of effort and work that just kind of goes to it. And you can kind of see the cracks in where things are going to be, where the problems are going to be that they just can't see because the momentum, and it's just so big and unwieldy. They just can't,
that's why I would love
get a handle on it, which is probably, kind of what happens with the sequel trilogy too.
Which is why I think as soon as, like you say, those MDAs are expired and they can do a tell-all about like behind the scenes of Rise of Skywalker, that to me, would be absolutely fascinating because, you know, you hear so much stuff from everybody about rumors and everything. And I think that story in itself will probably be more of a frantic yet cohesive story than we got with the final film. Like, there's probably more drama there, more actual, like, I mean, it is because it's real life, but just this total collapse of trying to please everybody and please stakeholders and focus tech groups,
right,
and
which is already impossible to please everybody.
Yeah, from what I understand from the rumors, the reason, because there's different people, like apparently the people at Lucasfilm were really keen on like Rian Johnson. I really probably shouldn't like be like, I mean, these are kind of rumors and things like that, but it's sort of like different you know, people, upper level people at Disney and Lucasfilm had different ideas on kind of who they wanted to kind of lead it, because they were, like you said, they're keen on, you know, maybe keen on trying to unite everybody in loving Star Wars. And when, you know, I guess the Lucas story for Episode 9 was sort of like, then they had to admit, you know, this won't please everybody. Then that's why they kind of got cold feet, because they're really keen on that. And if the box office is any indication for Rise of Skywalker, they didn't bite.
No, I think it's the lowest by at least 30 million.
At least, yeah, for opening week compared to Last Jedi, it's a pretty significant drop. I don't know if it'll even break $1 billion, which is, you know,
shocking. Well, the fact that Endgame made $1 billion over a weekend, and it doesn't seem to be. I think like 300 million worldwide is what I'm hearing, close to 400 million. Yeah. This weekend, and the reason why you brought up that we're not talking about the movie, because I'm trying to think about points, and it's not a movie. The Rise of Skywalker is not a movie. It is a
series of Star Wars related images played at 24 frames per second with an accompanying John Williams' greatest hits score going along with it.
The only time I thought it was truly thematic was the whole Death Star sequence when they're there. Like, that was the only thing that I think they actually had character.
Can we talk about the fact that this ancient knife that they have, was it an ancient knife? Because it would have had, in order for it to make sense, it would have had to have been made in the last 40 years, because the edge of the blade was exactly to the edge of this particular wreckage of the Death Star. I mean, did whoever make the knife see the future and know that they were going to stand in that exact spot on the cliff overlooking the particular wreckage to line it up?
An ancient language from like thousands of years ago, and like he couldn't say it because it had been outlawed for like generations and generations.
Yeah, and had a little thing come out and point to the thing. Yeah.
So let's get into, while we're on that, I'm just going to list off some of the big moments that happened. And get our thoughts on this. And Cale, after I say these big moments, Cale, I'm gonna have you take over with your initial thoughts.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I kind of did.
We have. Sorry. No, you good? I just want to make sure Cale gets his opinions off. We had Rey find out that she is the daughter of Palpatine. We have had Kylo Ren ended up turning on the good side at the last minute. We find out that Snoke was created by Emperor Palpatine for a bigger cause. We find out that that Palpatine gave the order to have Rey's parents killed. And then we find out that Palpatine has been away in hiding, trying to plot for something major and huge. We also find out, there are appearances by, of course, Princess Leia passed away.
We should probably start off like one by one, because this is a lot of...
I can do that, but I can also, all the points that you're making, as far as all those plot beats, I feel like if J.J. Abrams had directed the second film and had written the second film, those were all the revelations that would have been in his second film,
right?
Which would have led, because he does it all. I
don't know if Palpatine even being in the picture would have, you know.
Well, I think she could have been a Palpatine, but Palpatine himself would probably not have been a factor. Like, I do think there was some setup, because she went straight to, anytime like the Force was mentioned in the Force Awakens with her, or even in The Last Jedi, she would go to a dark place. Like, it was not a place of welcoming. Like, the Force was, it was a dangerous thing to her. Right. And it did seem like she had more of a dark relationship with the Force than
kind of like foreshadowing something.
Right. Like, even in The Force Awakens, when she finds Luke's lightsaber, it's not like a moment of clarity for her. It's a fearful moment. There seems to be a lot more darkness associated with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, all those points you make, like, they're just made so abruptly, and you don't have time to really reflect on it, and they
don't really go all the way with it. Like, she's afraid, but she's let out, like, but it doesn't she says she's afraid. It shows spooky images sometimes, but it doesn't pay off dramatically, except for one point in The Rise of Skywalker, which they immediately backpedal on. And you know exactly what moment I'm talking about, right?
Where she fights her evil self.
I'm talking when she blows up the ship that Chewbacca's supposedly on by accident with Force lightning.
Yes, one time she uses Force lightning in this film, or she's so powerful, and it's just used for quick simple, because in the very next scene you see that he's alive. Like, it's not even.
I was shocked when it happened. I'm like, oh right. Wow, it's actually doing something.
Like, they really are
kind of out. I mean, it was a little abrupt for a character as important as for Chewbacca. It's going to piss a lot of people off in the next season. It's like, wow, Rey is allowed to actually royally screw up with something that has lasting consequences.
Right, for her. And to be honest with you, that was my biggest problem with this film. There were way too many fake deaths. Mm-hmm. Way too many fake deaths. They should have killed Chewbacca's ass off. I'm sorry, but it's true.
It completely undermined C-3PO's really great moment there by just a few scenes later, and he's back. He's back to old C-3PO.
Yeah, they should have. There needs to be a great sacrifice by the old guard. Chewbacca should have been killed off. C-3PO should have just had his memory wiped. There was no way of getting it back, and they should have left it as that. There should have been bigger sacrifices. And then Leia making her sacrifice. That would have been a stronger film.
Was it a sacrifice? What exactly? I mean, I know they were limited because they were basically working off of archival footage from The Force Awakens.
She was giving up the Ghost and was going to be one with the Force. That's what that was.
The Ghost.
I mean, that's what it pretty much is.
Was it just her, giving one kind of doing what Luke did, where she used all the Force power she had left to kind of, show her son that she loved him? But if that's the case, then why did Han of anybody appear behind him? Why didn't his mother appear if she was using all the Force or something?
That's because they couldn't, because Carrie Fisher was dead and they couldn't film it.
I know, but then
and I thought the moment with Han was really great. That was one of the two moments.
That was one of the big moments.
Stirrings of an actual emotion in my chest, and as much as I'm not fond of just fan servicey callbacks, when he kind of chokes up and says "Dad," and he says, "I know."
Yeah, that was huge. That was a big moment.
I was like, right, that landed.
Well, originally, now this is another rumor that I heard. I heard that was when they were supposed to have Hayden Christensen come back as a Force ghost of Anakin.
I wish he did.
And I really wish he did. Tell him that he found redemption and that he doesn't.
His voice was in the movie.
Yeah, right. His voice was in the movie.
I heard the rumor that I heard. The reason why he didn't is because now Hayden Christensen is a farmer. He has these farmlands, and that's what he does. And it was harvest season. So he couldn't reprise the role. He was way too busy.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they had so many reshoots, they could have plugged it in somewhere. I mean, if they were going to work, they could work around a schedule for a day of shooting. I mean, come on. I mean, honestly, I
felt like the scene with Han Solo would have been stronger. I think we're going to learn
that maybe they filmed something with him, and then
it just didn't work out. It just didn't hit. Well, maybe
did you know that Matt Smith was actually cast in the movie? There's a lot that they cut. They basically reshot massive portions of the movie. Matt Smith was apparently supposed to be a major villain in the major villain in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Get out of here.
And they completely excised his role from the film. The rumor being that he was going to, I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with the Clone Wars TV show, but they introduced this concept of these sort of Force gods, but they're not really sort of gods. They're just kind of manifestations. And there's the father and then the daughter and the son who are the light side, the daughter, and the dark side, the son, and that Matt Smith was going to play the son, and he was going to be the primary antagonist of episode 9. But Disney thought it was too esoteric and was like, nobody really knows who that is.
And maybe that was why the Hayden thing didn't work out, because people who hadn't watched the prequels, if he would show up, then they'd be like, "Oh, who the hell is this guy?"
No, I don't think that was. It's just, I think they just kind of restructured the story, or they got, or they somehow convinced Harrison Ford with like $10 million to come back.
Thought, like he said, like he would never, like he just didn't care, didn't give a shit.
It was like, I mean, honestly, it was like one angle. It was like maybe like a couple hours. He could basically do the role in his sleep,
right?
For like a cool like 10 million, or for like a cool like million or something like that. I mean,
But that's why I said, like, at that moment, like, that was, like, the one story beat in that whole film that I actually, like you said, you get something out of. Emotionally, it resonates with you. And then
the other one was Chewie crying when he found out that Leia.
He's the guy who actually lost everything. He's lost everything. And you actually feel, like, this pain through, like, this fursuit. I don't care that Palpatine has his crazy Sith rave at the end where he's like sucking up were those actual people in there? Were those actually followers, or were those manifestations of his his powers or something? Did he have...
Does it matter?
They don't establish either or.
Who are the Knights of Rey? Like
the Knights of Rey, they're people to get cut down by Kylo Ren.
It was good to see him. See, that's another thing. Why bring these guys in? You don't give them a scene where they look like a threat.
They capture Chewie, but they don't like fight Chewie. They just kind of like they grab him and walk to the ship, and then they walk down a hallway, and there's some stormtroopers like, "Those are Knights of Ren. Oh wow, they're real spooky." And then they show up at the end, and Kylo Ren just kills him.
Had they revealed them or having them kill Chewie, have them doing something notable, something memorable, something.
Well, and they were force sensitive, because weren't those the knights that...
That's what I figured. Yeah, they were like old students. They didn't have like lightsabers or anything, or...
Because Luke had 24 apprentices or something, and then Kylo took 12 of them when he betrayed him. So they were supposed to be like force sensitive, and no...
I don't know. I don't read the extended or whatever.
No, but it wasn't. The last time he said Kylo took 12 of my knights and killed the other 12.
I don't know if there was an exact number, and they were like of his. I know it was like he took some of them and then did that. So,
let me tell you something. It was the biggest letdown of that film, because when I saw the Knights of Ren, I was like, "Oh, we're going to get a good fight scene with all of them or something." We didn't get not one massive like showing how strong they are. Nothing. You can't bring an infamous group like that in and not have them do something memorable. At least take out a main character.
That moment in their fight. I did like that moment in the fight, like right when Kylo Ren gets the blue lightsaber, that he does that kind of shrug thing, like right before. That was this. You saw the Han Solo kind of peek through a little there, and it's a little moment that I really really like.
And why are we so anti-green lightsaber? Like I wanted,
right?
Yeah. Why didn't Rey pull that out? Like. It would have been dope. You see the blue and the green lightsaber. Like, how come that wasn't?
I also don't know why it had to be like. I don't know why it had to be Leia's lightsaber, because that required kind of a clunky setup for that. That they had the CG Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, the CG
fight
the CG Mark Hamill.
So that they could explain.
The CG Mark Hamill was great.
Just have it be Luke's like green lightsaber or something, so it'd be those two lightsabers. So it would make sense to bury both of them in Tatooine at the end, because they're Luke Skywalkers.
But it would be so, like, that was actually, even though that sequence was like 20 seconds long, where him and Luke and Leia were training, that was another scene where I actually was intrigued by this idea of Luke training Leia to be like a Jedi Knight herself. Like,
I thought that was...
If it was a little bit more extended, I know like there was some uncanny CGI, but
yeah. Well, Mark Hamill looked fine. Young Mark Hamill looked fine. Young Carrie Fisher looked spooky.
Yeah.
Well, in the de-aging process or whatever they had to do, like Carrie Fisher, it's so weird. She's the youngest of all three of them by far, but because of her lifestyle, she looks at least like 15 years older than both Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
But it. I mean, and that's what I thought was going to be like the final lightsaber battle. I thought the Knights of Ren were going to fight Ben and Rey, and I thought...
Which would have been dope.
Right. Or like even if Palpatine, when he was fully restored, if he had a lightsaber battle with them, like even like a callback to the Clone Wars animated series where he had like the 2 Sith sabers or something, like just give us something like.
But here's the problem with that, though. If the climax of the movie is a massive lightsaber fight, what does that mean thematically? I mean, what they ended up doing was like just as dumb and bad, but like, how could they end like this thing with? I mean, Palpatine's. Bringing back Palpatine, I think, was thematically just a mistake in the first place. One, because it undermines Anakin Skywalker's sacrifice at the end of there and that whole thing there. And just the whole thing was you don't want to kill the Emperor because killing him, you give in to your hatred and stuff like that and fall to the dark side or something. Never 100% understood how that worked. But they kind of repeat that here. And so fighting him and just winning in a contest of strength, I mean, what is there to like mean anything? It's just, oh, we beat the other guy.
Can I play fantasy climax ending? So what they should have done is, and I want to get your thoughts on this, have Palpatine bring in the Knights of Ren. Like that's the first time I mean, if you're going to bring them in for something, have them come in to take Rey out, have Kylo step in to be by her side. Isn't
that just a repeat of the throne room fight from Last Jedi, though?
Way better, though.
That's what I was thinking.
Way better. Look, keep in mind, I'm not a big fan of Last Jedi, so I think, I'm literally putting that away in my mind. I feel like this would have been better. You had that fight. You had that fight go on, but you had the Knights of Ren kill off Kylo Ren, which leaves Rey to have the power of the Jedi all to herself to take out the remaining members or whoever the Knights of Ren are, because Kylo does get, you want to have Kylo go out strong a little bit, have him kill off a couple of those knights, and then you have the climactic thing between Palpatine and Rey. This is just me hodgepodging around trying to come up with a climax. Matt's sitting over there looking like, I don't know about that one.
What do you do with Palpatine, though? That still leaves the question of how do you resolve it? I mean, the reason the end of Return of the Jedi works as an ending for Luke's story, for the Emperor and Darth Vader and Luke's story, is that it wasn't about, beating the Emperor. It was about redeeming Darth Vader.
Right, but here's a problem.
And the Emperor is destroyed because of that sort of thematic turn there, and that's where the drama comes from.
Let me tell you something.
Fighting the Emperor,
right?
And the drama coming from that, it was from the drama of bringing Anakin Skywalker back from the depths of Darth Vader. If they did that again, I mean, they can't really do that with Kylo Ren, and the Emperor here, because then that's just a repeat of Return of the Jedi.
Right.
So what do you do? What can you do new that isn't just a contest of strength?
Right. Here's a problem.
Power. Here's a
problem, though. I didn't write for Palpatine to come back, so I'm getting this script in front of me that's saying, hey, Palpatine's coming back, make the best of it. So now you're forcing me to come up with a climax that still is going to negate what happened in Return of the Jedi and that sacrifice.
Which is why bringing back Palpatine in the first place
should never happen.
Did you even say how he came back?
The dark side is the pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
So,
I literally just kind of groaned in my seat when they did that. That one prequel thing, it's a great scene in the prequels, but
yeah,
that's the one thing you're going to bring something back for, is to hand wave away how Palpatine clones. I mean, it implied that he could, his spirit could.
And what's to say he can't come back? How's this the ending?
Right? It's probably got another backup drive somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Force drive.
I thought it was a mistake to kill Kylo. I thought if you're really going to end a book end of that story,
gave him too easy of an out.
Well, but it wasn't easy out because he still didn't. I feel like
that's what I mean. What we got was too easy.
Yeah,
killing the person after being redeemed is too easy now. I've seen some ideas of people he should have gone to Tatooine and lived as a hermit, as sort of like a penance thing, and to
like what if Rey decided to flee? Like they saved the day, and they knew that he could never be like a part of society again. Like he would have to pay for his crimes and everything. So they decide as a couple to like leave. Like they don't have to. That'd be a better.
I don't think they should have been a couple, but I do think he should. I do think they should have maybe split in kind of a way where there's sort of a mutual, like, not friendship, respect thing kind of going on. But I think Kylo should have gone his own way. Rey should have gone. It's kind of weird that
they were like making out as he was dying. That's kind of like. Oh,
I don't think she knew he was going to die.
It's about them ticket sales, people. People want that.
I feel that kiss was so unearned. I feel like they were like, okay, let's make him kiss because that's what everyone wants to see.
Yeah, money, ticket sales. Fangirls going crazy. I literally had somebody was like, "Oh, do they kiss at the end?" I said, "I'm not telling you that." She was like, "Oh my God, I have to see it. I have to see it." Like, girl, if you don't chill out,
just tell them so that they won't see it.
DeviantArt is gonna be lit with like different kinds of like drawings and styles of that kiss.
You say that like it's not already. Or hasn't already, or they haven't already come up with all sorts of permutations of romantic encounters between Rey and Kylo Ren.
Yeah, hopefully they keep it PG, but
no,
they're not. Oh, I figured.
But really, what else is there really to talk? I mean, the movie itself is just a whole sequence, like you said, of fetch quests and just scenes that really don't lead up to anything.
I kind of. My bad to interrupt. I'm gonna let you finish your thought. What were you saying, Cale?
Well, as far as a film from a narrative of a beginning, a middle, and end, The Last Jedi was a mess, but it did have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Force Awakens, beginning, middle, end. All these movies had a beginning, a middle, and an end. I cannot, for the life of me, recall what was the midpoint of this film. What was the point of this film where, okay, now all these characters have to do this to overcome something? There was never that this is our most desperate hour for like that midway point where they have to make serious adjustments and grow as characters to make an adjustment. Like I can
maybe the point where Rey is like learns of her heritage but that's sort of like right before the third act or whatever, and she discovers she's a Palpatine and tries to isolate herself at Octo, I think is the name of the planet from Last Jedi where Luke was hiding on, and tries to pull that and hide there because she's afraid of what she could become or whatever.
But then she herself hasn't suffered anything. She herself hasn't had to change or had to, like, all it heard was, hey, this is your family history. It's not like you said with the Chewie thing. There's nothing that she has done or nothing that has happened to her that's made her have to make any adjustments. Like she's not through any sort of challenge or
like there needed to be moments where she would get really, really angry with her friends or do something kind of overly aggressive with them. Like that was like, again, that the part where she accidentally force lightnings the ship and blows it up, that was getting there, but they had to have like an escalation of that amongst her journeys with Finn and Poe, like her getting more impatient, more angry, more fed up with things were going. Like it needed her to do that, but it didn't.
Or like when if she would have destroyed the ship with the lightning, she didn't initially like get shocked or anything. Like she was still angry and she didn't care about the ship for a second. She didn't care about.
I think I like that it kind of really broke her out of like her big anger moment. Like she had, oh fuck, what have I done? That I like that moment there.
I mean, I did like it, but as far as it showcasing herself as she has those sides of the darkness in her, like there's a darkness with the power, but there isn't that darkness of her heart. Like there needed to be some edge to her. If it was necessary for her to be a Palpatine, like I feel like there really wasn't any reason for her to actually be a Palpatine. besides a quick reason to say why she's so overpowered, and without having to explain her actually having training or anything.
And it's also a lazy shorthand for her, like having the potential to be evil. I think it's a lot more, like I was saying, it's a lot more powerful if it's just something that's just naturally of her character as a nobody. Because I like that twist, honestly, in The Last Jedi, that it was revealed that she didn't have a history. She was just some person. And I mean, I have issues with, her being, like she didn't do training and she's too overpowered. Like, we could niggle on that. Everyone's talked about that way too much. My point was, I like that she wasn't really like some descendant of a character or anything. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying that was like a massive subversion. Like, now the Forces, I mean, the prequels, they had aliens of all shapes, colors, and sizes could be Force users, and their parents weren't Force users. So that was already like an established thing.
And they could be like her.
We're talking like the main hero of the story. Right. Doesn't have to be like have to be connected to a legacy character. It could be.
And it could be a next version of what was Anakin. Like, Anakin himself wasn't really, he didn't have.
Yeah, but he was the chosen one, and he was born immaculately conceived. I mean, I think they've tried to like wiggle in some things, like the Force had something to do with it, or even like Palpatine had something to do with it. I think some of the comics have implied that. Whatever. I'm just counting the movies here. It's like he's chosen one, immaculate. That's still kind of like.
And how is he? And how is she? This opens up like. So how is she Palpatine's granddaughter? Does that mean he was like slinging dick as like this crippled old like malformed?
If we think about the time, it's possible. I mean, it's what? So it's 20 plus 30, 56 years, and she's like 20 something. It's possible that her parents could have been like in their 40s, and this could have been like right before Revenge of the Sith, or like the Clone Wars, when Palpatine was still like kind of, looked like a human being and was like Supreme Chancellor. But I mean, that doesn't really fit with Palpatine's character, where he is sort of like he's aloof, but he's single-minded in his machinations. Like he doesn't strike me as the person who would, go off on dalliances and father love children and things like that, because that would be a threat to his power. Having descendants.
It was clear that the mother of Rey was his daughter. Like, he had a daughter.
I don't know.
Because her father didn't look anything like him, but her mother kind of did.
They didn't dwell on it enough for me to.
Right.
Like everything in this movie, they just kind of, you're your daughter. Flash. All right, back to the story. Back. We're going.
Why wouldn't he want his daughter? Like, was Rey just an anomaly?
The pacing. The pacing was so choppy and fast that it didn't give you time to think about the lineage. And that was one of the downers of mine. The fake deaths got on my nerves. If you're gonna do a death, it needs to be definitive. It needs to have a strong impact. But also the pacing of the film, things were going by fast. Mm-hmm. Like, there needs to be some type of struggle with the stuff you're trying to find. There needs to be some type of struggle with, it can't be just shoot 'em up, bang, bang. Like, somebody's got to get seriously more injured than what we saw. You know what I mean?
Didn't Poe get injured? What happened to that? Poe got injured on the Star Destroyer.
Poe
he got shot, and that was like a moment.
Poe got shot. Poe got shot and was he was still able to fly an X-wing with no problem.
Oh, okay.
She healed him. Like Rey healed him again.
Did he? I don't even remember at this point.
So I mean,
none of us know.
She used it a lot. I mean, so
when I saw she did that, this thing, like, oh, they're setting up for some bullshit right now. I read some of the leaks. Like, I skimmed the leaks kind of ahead of time a little bit, so I don't know if that colors sort of how I reacted to certain revelations. But it's like, oh my God, they really are gonna do this. This whole thing that like Anakin and I mean, I don't know what the status of the canon is with like force healing. I guess it's like in the video games, there's like canon force healing and things like that. But
this kind of felt like a video game, to be honest. Like, structurally, things felt like a video game. I had a question for either of you. Have Have either of you ever seen the movie Kingdom of Heaven?
No, I haven't.
That's the Ridley Scott Crusades movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Did you see
good director's cuts.
Yeah, and I kind of
Miles better.
like this movie, if you did do like an extended director's cut, because the original cut of Kingdom of Heaven had kind of the same kind of pacing issues that this movie did, where it doesn't care about the characters. Like, things just happen really fast. Characters die really fast. You don't really get a sense of who these characters are or anything. But then there's an extended, like, 4.5 hour version of the movie, and it's a masterpiece. It's so good. And it's like, is this even the
Seems
same?
to be a running theme with Ridley Scott, because if you see, like, his other, like, I know Blade Runner's, like, the example of, like, an improved director's cut. His movie Legend, which is my personal favorite of his, got a director's cut with a whole new score.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like if we get, like,
it was the original score, but they cut it, blah, blah.
Or something, like, with an extended, that expands upon all these really weird and loose themes that we get in this movie. Like,
I think it's going to be tough because of the way these kinds of movies are made.
Right.
Only because a lot of it, like, a lot of the scenes are probably just not done CG wise. Like, they work on this literally, like, up to, like, the last minute kind of thing.
Well, this movie was very rushed, so.
It's like what people talk about when people talk about, like, the Snyder cut of Batman, of what was it, Justice League. I haven't even seen the original Justice League, so I don't have a frame of reference for this.
It's
but, like,
trash.
If
Don't
there
waste
was
your
a
time.
cut, it's what I don't really care much about the DC. I didn't like Batman vs Superman. Anyways, this supposed cut, if it did exist, would most likely be, like, made up of, like, previs, like, really, like, polygon people placeholders and, like, storyboards and things like that, placeholders for a lot of the scenes. They wouldn't be finished or anything like that. So to make that for, like, a effects heavy blockbuster, they would need to invest a hefty amount of cash to finish the scenes, unless they're like just like scenes of people talking anyway. So
it seems like this movie isn't even going to make enough money to warrant half of that anyway. So,
and I think a lot of the problem with the pacing of this movie was just within the scenes themselves. Like, I felt like if they just kind of let the scenes breathe a little bit on their own, they could have. Like, there were so many scenes where, like, I feel like this could work if you just kind of let the moments kind of breathe and sink in a little bit within the scene itself.
Well, the first half hours kind of felt like if they would have said, like, previously on Star Wars, like, that first 30 minutes seems like it was kind of like that. Like, you didn't have any room to breathe on anything. It was just, like, highlights of what's going to lead you up to the story. I got to get going here.
Oh yeah, no problem. So with that being said, I just want to I got 2 questions and we'll be done. My first question is where does this rank among all the Star Wars films? Is it at the bottom of your list, the middle? Where is it?
I would say I can't arbitrarily remember everything, but I would say it's 6th if I can really think of where it can go. Because
what is like just your ranking of all, like, I need a frame of reference for this. What's ahead of it? What's behind it?
Empire.
I've got I just posted like my new official rank list. So
Empire's number 1,
as it should be.
I think New Hope is 2 just because I like it. It's just a standalone, like, adventure film that's really fun. I actually think Revenge of the Sith is 3rd. Rogue One is 4th. Return of the Jedi is 5th. And maybe this is 6th then, because I really don't like. I don't really watch all the other ones. I can't really see myself watching for any reason ever again.
Did you liked it more than Last Jedi and Force Awakens?
Well, I kind of have, like, almost a disdain, not a disdain for The Force Awakens, but when I saw The Force Awakens, it's almost like a setup for things that you think they're going to build upon and they're going to be so good. So I almost like watch.
I disagree. I don't think it was setup. Setup implies a plan on where it's going to be going.
I know, that's what I mean.
J.J. Abrams is good at setting up mysteries. Mysteries aren't story. Mysteries aren't setup. If J.J. Abrams can't end anything, and the reason he can't end anything is because he doesn't know how to begin things. Because the key to if your ending isn't working, it's because your beginning doesn't work either. So I'm thinking, look up his TED Talk about mystery boxes. It's baffling that this guy is allowed to write scripts.
So
let me.
That makes me angry. It kind of makes me angry because when I rewatch it, I'm like, you didn't have any idea what you were doing here.
He was taking out a loan for somebody later to pay back, and he didn't know it, but that person was going to be him.
Oh wow! Hey, Matt, where do you rank Rise of Skywalker?
Fuck, let me pull this up. Empire Strikes Back is my favorite, followed by Return of the Jedi, followed by Revenge of the Sith, followed by A New Hope, followed by The Last Jedi, and then Force Awakens, then Episode 1, then 2, then Rogue One, then Solo, and at the very bottom is Rise of Skywalker. Because as bad of films as not bad of films, because as whatever problems the other films had, I feel like I got something out of them. Whether it was, thematically, emotionally, in moments, or like characters that I kind of liked or something like that. I walked out of Rise of Skywalker not feeling much of anything. I didn't feel like I really got anything out of it other than like this kind of a vague sort of like excitement from just, boom, camera's moving fast, action scene kind of here is the pacing, characters yelling and things like that. It was, and like, yeah, this movie, I didn't feel anything. I don't hate it. I wasn't disappointed because I didn't really go in with expectations. And for me, a movie that's, clearly that's by committee, doesn't have a voice, doesn't really mean anything, is worse than a poorly executed movie with an idea behind it, with clearly somebody had something they wanted to say and story they wanted to tell. And even if it was done poorly, like it is with the sequels, I'd rather have that over something that's, I don't know why it exists other than to be more Star Wars.
Yeah, it makes sense. I got one last question and we're going to close. The business of sequels used to be a major event and a point where people would either make a good attempt on trying to establish a good sequel, or it would be a failed attempt but respected. Now it seems like the idea of a sequel in Hollywood is more so a cash grab than anything else. A blatant nostalgic cash grab. So let me ask you guys this question. Have Star Wars fans gotten to the point where, because things have not gone where they want it to go, are they giving solid, constructive criticism, or are they just bitching about everything?
That sounds like a loaded question.
So you're asking, at this point, has it almost become like they've become the comic book guy from The Simpsons, essentially?
I'm asking if we're headed in that direction. Do you feel like it? If you feel like the constructive criticism is warranted, I'm asking one of the two things. What side are you on with this?
I think that both sides of the coin have been kind of played on both sides. Like, I feel like when you had The Force Awakens, it was a love letter to fans, and then you had The Last Jedi, which was kind of like a middle finger to the fans. And so
I don't think it was. I disagree that it was a middle finger to the fans.
I see that
it definitely felt like,
because there's plenty of people plenty of fans who love The Last Jedi.
But
I think even making the distinction of like the singular Star Wars fans is already kind of an exercise in futility, because it's such a broad, universal appeal kind of movie. You're going to have fans with different tastes all over the spectrum and things like that. So even the concept of one or the other like being like actual fans doesn't really ring true to me.
I think what we also don't really think about a lot is that hardcore Star Wars fans already got their sequels in the expanded universe. They actually had like a Lucas approved canon to draw from. They had like the continuation of the story. They had Han and Leia's children. They had Luke's wife. They had his children. They had like this whole canon that was working towards something big, and then Disney just totally wiped it clean. So any hardcore fans that preferred that expanded universe narrative, they're already subject to being more overly critical of someone else's interpretation. If that makes sense.
Definitely does. It definitely does. Well, I want to thank both of you gentlemen for coming on to Audio Airstrike to talk about this. We have definitely opened some people's eyes and have pissed some people off. You can't please everybody. That's the moral of the story. You just can't please everybody. Ask Disney, ask Star Wars, ask us. We cannot please everybody, especially fans of one thing that we all can agree on is that people love Star Wars. People are very passionate about Star Wars, as we can see. We're doing a whole hour on it. So with that being said, first of all, Matt, I want to thank you for coming on. Cale, I want to thank you for coming on. Is there anything that you guys got going on that you want to plug? Any films that you guys are working on? Any projects you guys are working on? Anything?
You gotta spring this on me, man.
I got to do it. We're creatives here.
The only thing, my biggest project I've been doing for about 2 years now, I've been making a webcomic called The Imperial Guard, which is pretty cool.
Hold up. Is that based on that script that you were doing in that screenwriting class that we were doing?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. In my case, I'm finishing up working on my first feature film script that I've been working on for a while. I've been working on an animated short film that's been kind of in the works. What else am I doing? Oh, I'm working on a novel. This is like stuff I can't really plug because it's all like stuff that's kind of in progress right now. I mean, I just posted my short film that I just finished its festival run on Vimeo. Look up Matthew Friend, subscribe or whatever bullshit plug. I'm bad at plugging myself.
I mean, the only place you can find my webcomic is on the Tapas website, and it's Imperial Guard Tapas.
I'll be sure and check it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really wanted to complete the first volume of it. I'm like 130 pages deep into it, and I'm working. You wrote and drew it. Yeah. Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm on the fifth and final part of the first volume, and that's when I'm gonna like plug it a lot when I like finish it, so I can have like the first arc of it done, and so that's what I've been working on. And it's a story I wanted to tell for years and years and years. The real version, not the version that went in script class, where he's like you have to adjust it for a script purpose.
I hated that class, by the way. I did not like the teacher either.
I have to hear one more thing about Groundhog Day. Like
What About Bob was apparently just like this like pinnacle of screenwriting that we had to like root all of our conceptions about structuring a screenplay about, and it was fucking awful. Sorry if this is supposed to be like a PG-13 podcast.
No, you good. I've said a couple of choice words. So Matt basically hates his screenwriting teacher. So whoever his screenwriting teacher was, he don't like you're behind it all. He hates J.J. Abrams.
Yeah. I don't hate J.J. Abrams.
You just blasted him for 50 minutes. I'm just trolling you, yo.
I don't want anyone to hate anything.
I'm just getting jokes off right now. It's fine.
I don't want people to hate. Like what you like.
The best actual Star Wars media to come out in a long time was the Tommy Wiseau inserted in.
There's a Pistol Shrimp. That's the YouTube channel.
That was genius. That's brilliant. And like it says at the end, if a lot more people loved each other, the world would be a much better
place.
Well, on that note,
I think we should end it on that.
Yeah, on that note, we'll close it here. This has been another edition of Audio Airstrike. Thank you for listening. Until next time, everybody, see ya.